What is up, ladies and gentlemen? Welcome back to Mainly Movies, the channel where we talk about, well, mainly movies. So today I'm going to be talking about the sequel to Train to Busan, Peninsula. This story is set 4 years after the infection has started. Nearly everyone has evacuated South Korea, and the zombies have been left. A group of trained individuals head back to South Korea to steal a truck full of money.
You get the truck, come back with the money. That's $2.5 million per head. If you come back alive.
Now, first of all, that's one of my positives, is the story itself. The story was something different, although there's been some movies where, people have to go back into an affected area, sort of like, 28 weeks later is sort of like that, where people will have to kind of help people get out or something like that. But this movie is actually about like a group of trained people, trained individuals going into South Korea, which is just completely deserted, just run with zombies. There's a few people and there's a few like mercenaries in there that are meant to get people out, but they're kind of the bad guys of the movie. But I like the idea of them having to go and steal this money and this truck full of money, and they get like a piece of the money, a certain percentage of the money. I thought that was really good and a really new situation. And yeah, one thing I will say about this film though is if you're expecting Train to Busan, you're not gonna like this movie at all. This movie feels like, to me, it feels like a Hollywood action film. This is a zombie action film. There's big action set pieces. There's one scene in particular that feels and resembles a lot like John Wick, where the character's just kind of spraying people down with machine guns. And also towards the end, it feels like a Fast and Furious Mad Max road rage, big situation, this big vehicular combat scene, which I thought was pretty interesting. Now, does this movie set up characters as well as the first movie does? No, but it does set up the characters, but in a very different way. Train to Busan sets up the characters at the very start of the movie. We get introduced to the main character and his daughter, and stuff like that happens, and everything builds up until the train, and I think that's a perfect way to build it up. Although it's a bit slower, it's a perfect way to build up the characters, and it pays off later on in the film. This film doesn't really do that. This film throws you in with all this information at the start, and at first I didn't really like that, but as the movie went along, it takes its time to go back and build this character as the movie goes along. And I thought that was very interesting because the movie is very fast-paced. The pacing is one aspect of the movie I really like. It stays consistent throughout the whole film. First, second, and third act are just fast-paced action films. It just rapidly gets into scenes, and I really like that. But it also has time to build these characters throughout these scenes. The movie starts, bang, this opening scene happens, it gets to the next act, and it just keeps going like that. And I think it works very well. There wasn't an act during the movie where I was like, bored or anything. There wasn't actually a moment in this movie I was bored. It always kept me entertained. It kept me on the edge of my seat. It was thrilling. There was side characters in the movie that were really good as well, but there was also side characters in the movie that weren't, which is something that I'm going to talk about, which is my negative. There were two characters in particular that just die simultaneously, and there's a lot of characters that just built up to die, like typical horror films. And I didn't really like that because it felt very like ham-fisted, and it needed to be there. That was one thing I didn't really like about the film. Also, at times the main character of the film just feels very one note. There are times in but I mean that's kind of the same issue that the first movie has as well. The main character feels very one note, but throughout the movie that main character gets better. Whereas in this film, the main character stays kind of one note throughout the whole movie, but there are certain things that happen in his past, or there's certain characters in the film, like his brother, and he remembers certain things, brother-in-law, he remembers certain things about what he says, and he goes back to some of the lines that he says, and it works well like that. It's kind of hard to talk about it without spoiling it, but there is one line in the movie which you have to pay close attention to, where the brother-in-law says to the main character, you think way too logically, or something like that. It's a line just like that. And I almost feel like that line is aimed towards the audience, because simply the movie has no logic. It has no logical sense whatsoever. There's scenes where they are spraying people down with guns for at least 5 minutes without even reloading. They only need to reload when the movie wants them to reload. So I mean, it's kind of it's a bit like that. It's very over the top. It's a big, almost blockbuster action film, and it almost in a way reminds me of like World War Z or 28 Weeks Later, when there's like these big action sequences. So I mean, yeah, it's not really a zombie survival film or a zombie horror. It's like an action film. There's certain things throughout this film that they set up and they reference back later on in the film, which I thought was very interesting. One in particular with a window full of zombies. They referenced that later on in the film, which was good, you know. Earlier on in the film, you just think that's like something there that they're looking at and they're kind of scared. But they used that later on in the film, and I thought that was well set up. I thought a lot of things were well set up. Now, does this movie have as much emotion as the first movie? It has emotion, but just not as much as the first movie. The first movie perfectly sets up these characters. It perfectly sets up the situations. And I mean, when, you know, the emotional stuff happens, it is quite emotional. Whereas in this film, there's emotional stuff, but there's not enough stuff before it to make it seem as emotional as it does. But I mean, again, it is still emotional, and the ending is very good, and I do enjoy the ending of this movie. I do enjoy this movie as well, but I will say that the movie for me got better as it went along. Probably because my mind shut off from it being a like realistic zombie film and just turned into this action blockbuster, and that's probably why it got better as it went along. So just keep that in mind. And that is why I'm going to give Peninsula a 7 out of 10. About halfway through the movie, I was thinking, man, this is only probably going to be about, you know, maybe a 6, a 5 or a 6. But like I said, as it went along, my brain shut off and it turned into a very fun action movie, and probably one of the best zombie action films I've seen in a while. So yeah, I'm probably going to give it a 7. I do recommend Peninsula, especially if you're a fan of Train to Busan, but just don't expect Train to Busan when you're watching this film. Anyway guys, thank you for watching the video. If you enjoyed the video, please leave a like and subscribe, and I hope to see you guys in the next video. So stay tuned, I'll see you guys next time. Bye.